bit rough of a charge, that one, isn't it? I don't know. It's another disappointment.
I don't agree with that.
I'm not putting it out. I'm just saying that's what more than one person said that to me. I'm not saying I agree with it.
But that to me suggests a lack of effort. And the one thing I would say, things didn't work, systems didn't work. You know, everything that you've just mentioned there and that we've already spoken about. The one thing I wouldn't criticise them for is just, you know, a complete and utter lack of effort. We were working, our players were working, but nothing was working, and it was like I'll go back to what I said. They just looked like they'd forgotten how to win games. That was it.
Yeah, and again, that could just be down to not playing proper competitive hockey for the last 3 weeks of the season, which is always going to be a worry, and something again that we talked about. One thing I think went really, really well, and I don't know if you two are going to agree with me, I thought the refereeing was excellent over both games. I thought Toby and Neil Wilson on Saturday, and then we had Neil Wilson and Steve Brown on Sunday. They let the game flow, they let the players decide it. There was maybe a few calls you could think about, but generally speaking, two of the best refereed games. Don't know if it was to do with the 4-man system. We talked about that before when we thought, you know, when it goes from being a 3-man system all year to a 4-man system, you get too many penalties called. I thought the guys got it just about right, and having, you know, sometimes we get on the referees' backs in this podcast, although we try not to, but I think in my opinion, all three of the guys need to be congratulated in the way they refed it. Excellent. Thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it went pretty well. All things considering, because that was my concern as well. With being part of the 3-man system all year long, are both referees going to start sort of calling their own game, and we get a wee bit of a mess, as we've seen when we've seen it getting rolled on a more regular basis. So, and yeah, I think as well, there wasn't, I don't recall anything particularly controversial or particularly egregious, so that I think that's always a good sign. And sort of like your stay-at-home D-men, if you don't notice them, then that's a good sign, and you can only hope for that going into the playoff weekend this coming weekend.
Sure.
Just
sorry, Graham, you want to come in the rest?
No. Just one sentence. I think both games were a great advert for the 4-man system. We should try that a bit more often.
Yeah, we'll keep saying it, and it maybe happen eventually. But that's a topic for another show, probably. The only other thing that I kind of Dundee webcast carry on, I didn't like it. I mean, the fact that they said they weren't going to do one, which is fine. But then to come on midweek, was it Wednesday or Thursday, and reiterate they're not going to do one, and then with an hour to go decided to do one, it's just not the way you treat. I know that Dundee don't really care about Braehead Clan fans. We're not their concern, but I just think it's indicative of the way sometimes fans in the Elite League feel they get treated. And I don't think it was very particularly fair. I don't think it was the right way to do it. It's probably the only business where you could get away with treating paying customers like that. Again, I know that we're not Dundee Stars' concern, but I thought it was pretty awful way to behave. You're either going to do it or you're not, and I think you have to make that stand to try and basically coax people to come to the game, because the people that I spoke to that were going to the game had decided well in advance. You know, they decided months ago they were either going or they weren't. There was very few people that would have been swayed by the fact there was a webcast. If you're a Braehead Clan fan and you're supported them all year, you're going to that game whether there's a webcast or not. To carry on the way Dundee did really, really disappointed me, and to me it's kind of indicative of the way that some fans feel they get treated in this league, and it's not good enough, and I'm calling it out. That's all I want to say. I don't know if you guys want to add anything.
I agree. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're going to get two schools of thought. You're going to get the people who think that it's smart business, because that's what you do. You sell your tickets and then you stick it on a webcast. I would tend to agree with that in out-and-out terms, but, you know, I'm sorry, this is a phrase I keep using nowadays, but if that's a corner shop thinking that you're going to be using, and I think we're already seeing it again this week with the blooming playoffs, it's not good. And you made the point about, you know, Dundee don't really care about the Clan fans. I would argue the opposite. They care a hell of a lot about the Clan fans because they want our money, and I just don't like the way that kind of treats us. Because,
no, but I just think they don't care whether they piss us off or not, because they think they'll just get money anyway.
They'd be pissed off if all of a sudden there was a Clan fan, let's not go to Dundee this coming weekend. It just, again, it's just that mentality, it's that cynical approach to the whole thing. I would suggest, however much it might be good business, it's unprofessional, and it makes us feel as fans just manipulated. And, with the greatest respect to Dundee Stars, I would say that this is a league mentality as well, by and large, and the whole thing just stinks. And I'm afraid, again, we have to watch what we're saying about webcasts because we don't even do them. But I would suggest that in that respect, at least we're consistent. I don't know. I think I was going to be a bit more wary next season.
It's not like we keep up at the last minute and say, "Woo, there you go." I think it was, to me, it was more the midweek sort of, we're definitely not doing a webcast. We're not just kidding on. I think that's the one that really got me, really, and then they went ahead and did it. That's what really peed me off. I don't know, Raymond.
I guess I'll paraphrase something that Arian Murphy said at the start of the season. Brian McGrattan at the Panthers, fantastic. I live in Dublin. How can I watch any of that? Yeah. It's back to that, and it's back to what Murph covered the other night in some detail, so I won't repeat too much of it. And I agree with Graham. He brought up a point that I was about to mention, and that's consistency. And for the start of each year, I think as a club, you need to have a policy, regardless of whether it is you're going to show games or you don't. Just have it written down, black and white, on a web page or that somewhere, and say, this is what we'll do, this is what we won't do, and we'll stick with it. But I wouldn't expect any club to adhere to something like that, because the goalposts get changed almost on a week-on-week basis, and it's not professional. It's not a good advert for the league, and especially as well, another thing we covered the other night was sponsors. Is that you want your own business advertised as far as it can possibly go, whether it's a webcast or television, radio, whatever. And if you're limiting the scope of the sponsorship, well, that's going to limit the potential revenue for sponsors that you can make. So, yeah, I would say team or league, whatever level they do it at, you got to have a policy and you got to stick with it, at least on a season-by-season basis.
Yeah. It's not going to happen, though, is it? Let's face it.
No. Well, Murph had made the point about the fact you've got all these disparate individuals with individual businesses, and they all think, and they all, quite understandably, they all want to run their businesses the way that they want to run their businesses, and you could argue they've got every right to do so. But the mixed messages that sends out as a league, with no central league focus to try and, agree certain parameters that teams can all work within. I mean, there should be a published set of standards issued at the start of every season about how these things are going to work, and I agree with Ray's point, just get it out there, get it published, we're going to do webcasts or we're not. And if you want to change your mind halfway through the season, then fine, but the point is, just treat the fans with some respect. Don't just treat them as walking wallets, which we as Clan fans are well used to. And, Dundee are doing exactly to us what other teams, including sometimes our own, do. So, we should be used to it by now, but that doesn't mean to say we have to be happy about it.
Well, they were getting my purple pound either way, because I was always going to that game. I don't know. It's like, I did listen to that part of your programme, and I think Aaron, and we've been saying that on the programme all year as well, the fact that there's not one single figurehead who's independent means that you get nothing. It's hard to get proper consistency. And I'm not particularly on a vendetta against David Sims, but the fact there's still not been any official statement from the league about an employee of one of their clubs saying what he said, whether you agree with what he said, whether you think it was right, whether you think it was a joke, the fact there's been nothing said about it, what are we now, 6 weeks, 7, 8 weeks down the line? It's just absolutely ridiculous. And again, just makes it's like treating the fans as if they're stupid. We'll just won't say anything and they'll forget about it. When in reality, if anybody wants to take this league to the next level and make it a proper professional league, they really have to start grabbing these things by the scruff of the neck. But that won't happen, in my opinion, until we have a chief executive or a whatever you want to call it, a figurehead who is going to have these kind of decisions. I don't know. I know you guys spanked it with Aaron last night, so there's not really much point in going over and over and over it again. Hey now, don't dream it's over. Hey now, when the world comes in, there come We'll move on now to what teams have made it through to the playoffs. Obviously, Dundee, having beaten Braehead, will go through. Is it right? They're facing Cardiff, isn't it? They'll get the number one seed in Cardiff on Saturday. Can you see Dundee managing to overcome Cardiff, Raymond?
Well, with all the cliches, it's a one-off. They've nothing to lose. I think certainly based on the sort of performance they were given against us and what they've had to do to even get into the playoffs, I would give them as good a shot as anybody. And we've seen in the past couple of playoffs as well, the bottom or sitting bottom seeds actually made the finals, so it's all the sort of omens and storylines are there for them to do it. But Cardiff, of course, they're going for the real Grand Slam this year, and they've looked absolutely sensational for the most part of the season. So on paper, it's probably a hands down Cardiff win, but I wouldn't be as comprehensive as that. I think there won't be a bad game for these two semi-finals, and I don't think there'll be any blowouts. So I think I would just tip Cardiff to squeak through by maybe a goal or two. I think Dundee, whatever happens, they'll make a real good fight of it.
Yeah, Graham, can you see Dundee causing an upset?
I'd love to see it, but it's not going to happen, in my view. I just think... Cardiff, although they've made things a little bit difficult for themselves during the course of the season, although they won the league with a little bit to spare, but they've had their ups and downs during the course of the season. But as we're talking about, anything can happen on the playoff final weekend. I think Mark Lefebvre will have the tactics right, because he's proven yet again he's capable of doing that. I mean, he's after his Coventry trials, I think he's proven himself to be an excellent coach. But the bottom line is, they got to the playoff final weekend playing ultimately a poor Clan team. So I think Cardiff are going to have quite a bit too much for Dundee. I think they'll be feisty, they'll put up a good fight, maybe the first period keep it really tight, but I can just see Cardiff winning by potentially 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, I think even if you think that, if Dundee come out the blocks the way they did against us, and if Cardiff have for some reason switched off, or for I doubt it's going to happen, but for a minute think they've got it easy, you can't, even if Dundee raced out to a 2 or 3-0 sort of start, you can't see Cardiff not be able to pick that up and pull it back. They've just got far too much quality run about. They'd really all have to have an off night for me. I'd love to see Dundee win. I've got nothing against Cardiff, but I'd love to see Dundee go with the Scottish team, go with the Gardner Conference. I just can't see it. I can't see past Cardiff. It would have to take, both set of circumstances. Dundee would need to play out their skins, and Cardiff would need to have the worst game they've played all season, really. I think Cardiff won all 4 games against Dundee this year. I think Dundee ran them close. A game at the start of the season, 5-4, I'm not sure. I think there's a 4-2 and a couple of 4-1s. So they've not really managed to do it in regular season, but, Cardiff have been a train all year. And I just can't see past them for this. Probably the closer one, and probably one that's harder to go for, Belfast and Sheffield. Graham, what do you think about that one?
It's going to be a cracking game, I don't doubt it. I mean, 2, I would reckon, pretty closely matched teams. I think on paper, you're kind of struggling to pull them apart, to be honest with you. Good goaltending, just depth throughout, with players that can score goals. I think on paper, Sheffield are actually the better team. But again, in the context of a playoff semi-final, anything can happen. And I think
Sheffield have been a wee bit more inconsistent than Belfast over the year, though, haven't they? They're more likely to blow hot and cold.
They are, but again, I just think, who's the team that can get it done at the time? And I can't see beyond Sheffield, to be quite honest with you. The Paul Thompson factor, the fact that I think, when push comes to shove, they've just got that extra, quarter inch of will to actually get things, to get past whoever they're playing against when it really matters. And I mean, okay, mitigating circumstances with the comeback against Nottingham, but they'll be on a high after that, regardless of what the circumstances were. So, I think it'll be very, very tight. I think, there's a lot at stake with Belfast. It's a while since they've performed well at the playoffs for obvious reasons. And I just think it'll be really tight, but I just think Sheffield will have too much for them.
Yeah. I'm not sure.